A very good morning, students. Now in this video we will learn the muscular and ligamentous attachment of this long bone fibula. As in the previous video I said that this fibula is from the left side, so that let me mark it here. This is the medial aspect of the fibula and this is the lateral aspect. This is the upper hand, rounded upper head, okay, or the upper end, and this is the lower end of the fibula, that is the lateral malleolus, okay, where a triangular articular facet is present on its medial side. If I keep this bone in this anatomical position, the upper end is upward, the lower end is downward, okay, where it is the lateral malleolus, the triangular articular surface is facing towards the medial side, and then this malleolar fossa is postero-inferiorly. That is the exact anatomical position. Okay, now we will learn, I will give you a very short revision about its borders and surfaces. So I am bringing it close to the camera, and here you will see that this is the anterior border, okay, anterior border of the fibula. Then by the side, very close to it on medial side, okay, this border is that of the intraosseous border, okay, this is the anterior border, this is the intraosseous border, and in between the two this is a narrow surface which is called as anterior or medial. Some books will mention it as medial surface, some will call it as anterior surface. Just for orientation, if you will trace this anterior border, then you will see that at the lower end it will split into two to enclose a triangular area, okay, which goes towards the lateral surface of the lower end or the lateral malleolus, and this whole surface is subcutaneous, which yesterday I said that you can feel in your own body, okay, the lateral malleolus, right? Now, then between the this anterior border here, and then when I turn the fibula here, this is the posterior border, okay? So this surface, okay, which faces towards the lateral side, this is the lateral side, okay? This is called as the lateral surface. So this was anterior medial surface, and this is lateral. And then between the intraosseous border and the posterior border here, this whole surface is called as the posterior surface. It is called. And in the middle of that you can see a ridge here that is called as the medial crest, which divide it into the anterior and the posterior part, okay, anterior part and the posterior part. So this is just the brief. Again, because this bone is very twisted and the borders and surfaces are not very clear, so I have just revised it, okay. Now we come to the attachment. First I come to the muscular attachment of this anterior or the medial surface, which is between the anterior and intraosseous border. Okay, it has some width, but as you trace it upward towards the head or towards the lower end, it becomes very narrow. It is very difficult that I cannot draw with the chalk the muscles which are attached onto the anterior surface. Now this anterior surface or medial surface is also called as extensor surface, because the three extensor muscles, they take their origin from here. Extensor digitorum longus, extensor hallucis longus, and then peroneus tertius. Now, for this purpose, I have just drawn the pencil outline to tell you about the attachment onto the anterior surface. Okay, this is anterior surface, and here you will see that I have drawn this diagram, and this is for the anterior. Because it is such a narrow space, I cannot draw here the diagram. So, in the anterior surface, extensor digitorum longus takes its origin from upper 3/4, right from the head, right from the neck, I mean to say, right from the region of the neck, it goes down, and its upper 3/4, there is the origin of the extensor digitorum, okay, extensor digitorum longus. Okay, it is an origin, so I will try to draw it with the red pen. Okay, so this is the extensor digitorum coming from the neck. I have not shown you the neck of the fibula on the anterior surface, but remember that this is the extensor digitorum longus, which is taking origin from the anterior aspect of the anterior surface or the medial surface. So this is the extensor digitorum longus, extensor digitorum longus, and just towards the interosseous border of this, there will be another muscle, extensor muscle, called as extensor hallucis longus will take its origin, and that will take origin from the middle to fourth part. So if I draw this extensor digitorum longus here, extensor hallucis longus from its middle to fourth part, the middle. So this will be the extensor digitorum longus, this is the extensor hallucis longus, both long muscles, from the middle to fourth. And then lower down in the lower part of the anterior surface, there is a muscle from lower 1/4 part of it, and this muscle is called as the peroneus tertius. So this is the peroneus tertius muscle. So these are the three extensor muscle taking origin from extensor surface or anterior or medial surface. Now I will go to the lateral surface. So I will just draw these muscles on the lateral surface. This surface here is the anterior border and this is the posterior border, and this surface is called as the lateral surface. And on this lateral surface, there are two muscles which are taking origin, and these muscles are peroneus muscle. So this surface is also called as the peroneus surface. Again it is origin. So I have drawn a diagram here. If you can see here, this is the surface called as the lateral surface I have just drawn here, and this will give origin to the peroneus longus from its upper third, right from the neck. Again it is right from the neck it will be taking origin, and this is peroneus longus muscle. Upper 3/4, upper right from the neck, upper 3/4, it is the peroneus longus. So I will just write here peroneus longus muscle. Then from its lower 2/3, lower 2/3, but in front of the peroneus longus, this is an oblique origin of another peroneus muscle, which is called as peroneus brevis muscle. This muscle is called as peroneus brevis muscle, right? So there are two muscles on the lateral surface, peroneus longus and the peroneus brevis muscle, right? This gives the tendon, and this tendon, it lies onto the lateral surface of, they wind round the surface, subcutaneous surface here, and then they will lie onto the posterior surface of the lateral malleolus or lower end, posterior, where the groove is present for the passage of these two tendon, peroneus longus and peroneus brevis, on the posterior aspect of the lower end or the lateral malleolus. So this completes the attachment of the two surfaces. Let us come to a surface which is between the interosseous border and between the posterior border, and this is called as the posterior surface. So now just see, this is the posterior surface, and this is in the middle is the medial crest, which will divide it into the anterior portion and the posterior portion. In front of the medial crest and between the interosseous border and the medial crest, there will be a origin of a muscle, and this muscle will be just lying anterior to the tibial crest, and this is called as the tibialis posterior. This is called as tibialis posterior muscle. So in front of the, I mean to say between the medial crest and that of the intraosseous border here between, this is the tibialis posterior muscle which will be taking origin. Now then posterior to this medial crest there will be a muscle here which is called as soleus, and this soleus will take origin from its upper 3/4. This is the soleus muscle on posterior surface, right from neck down below. This muscle is soleus. Okay, so just I mean say posterior to this medial crest, and this was the tibialis anterior. Tibialis posterior, not anterior, sorry. This was the tibialis posterior muscle. Now then from the lower 3/4, okay, there will be another muscle, okay, then, and this muscle is called as extensor hallucis longus. Extensor hallucis longus. This muscle is the, in the lower part on the posterior surface is the, sorry, not extensor, I am sorry, it is the flexor hallucis longus, because this surface, posterior surface, is also known as the flexor surface. It is also called as flexor surface. So whole of this surface of the fibula, the posterior surface between intraosseous border and posterior border, where in the middle is the medial crest, this gives origin to the three important muscles, tibialis posterior, soleus, and that of the flexor hallucis longus. All the three muscles, they are the flexors muscles of the leg. Okay, so this completes the muscular origin. So you have seen that all the muscles were taking their origin from the fibula. Okay, they were origin. Insertion was not here. Now let us come to the attachment of the ligaments, okay, and the intermuscular septa. Okay, intermuscular septa. Now yesterday I have shown you this diagram, which was a cross section of the fibula, right? This was the anterior border, this is the posterior border, and this is the intraosseous border. Between anterior and intraosseous, this was the anterior surface. Between intraosseous border and that of the posterior border, where the medial crest is present, this was the posterior surface, and between anterior and posterior, this was the lateral. So there will be attachment of intermuscular septa onto the anterior and posterior border, and this is anterior and posterior intermuscular septa. To the intraosseous border, there is an intraosseous membrane will be attached, which will go towards medial side to attach to the intraosseous border of the tibia. Then to the medial crest, there will be the attachment of the another posterior intermuscular septa. Okay, so there are so many, all these borders are medial crest, they give attachment to the intermuscular septa to divide the leg muscle into the various compartments. Extensor compartment, the flexor compartment, and this will be the peroneal compartment. Lateral will be the peroneal compartment. Let us come to see the attachment of other ligamentous attachment and the attachment, I mean say relation of the nerves. There is a nerve related to the neck of the fibula here. Let me bring it to close to the camera, and this is the common peroneal nerve, right to the neck of the fibula, common peroneal nerve. And then come to the lower end where the attachment are seen. There was a triangular rough area just above the triangular articular area. See this triangular rough area, can you see here? I have brought very close to the camera. Let it focus. Yes, this rough area, and this rough area gives attachment to the intraosseous ligament which extend between the tibia and fibula. So this is the intraosseous tibiofibular ligament which forms the joint, okay, inferior tibiofibular, very strong ligament binding the lower end of the two bones, tibia and fibula, right? Then as I have said you that here the posterior surface, okay, this is the posterior surface of the lower end called as the lateral malleolus, okay, and there is the groove for that of the peroneus longus and peroneus brevis tendon, okay, which we have already discussed. Now if you see the attachment of this pit or this fossa, and this fossa is called as the malleolar fossa, which lies postero-inferior to the triangular articular area, and this is for the formation of the ankle joint where it will articulate with the talus. Now this deep depression of the triangular articular fossa, it's not articular, triangular fossa, that is the malleolar fossa just behind that of the triangular articular surface, gives attachment to many ligaments, but I will tell you only two important ligaments: posterior tibiofibular ligament, which is at the upper side, posterior in the depression itself, okay, posterior tibiofibular ligament, and then in the lower part it is the posterior talofibular, tibiofibular and the talofibular, going to the talus, and this is going to the posterior aspect of the tibia, hence tibiofibular and that of the talofibular ligaments. Okay, I think these are the important ligaments which I am telling you only. Okay, then I come to the ossification of this bone. For the ossification, I will just draw a simple diagram here, and this simple diagram, let me draw a very simple diagram for the ossification. See here, I hope you can, let me draw it with pen because pencil is very faint. So this is, suppose, the upper end of the cartilaginous model of the fibula, okay, and then the center of ossification will appear in the 8th week of intrauterine life. This is the primary center of the ossification, and then the cartilage is then replaced gradually with the bone, both going towards upper end and the lower end of the fibula. So it is the 8th week of intrauterine life where the primary center appears, which forms the diaphysis or that of the saw. And then by the end of the first year there appears a secondary center at the lower end, and this is in the first year of life of a child, okay, and this is the secondary center for lower end, which forms the bone of the lower end, okay, and then there remains a small cartilaginous plate which is called as the epiphyseal cartilaginous plate. Similarly, a secondary center for the upper end appears between 3 to 4 years of age of a child, and then it forms the end of the upper end of the bone, okay, so this is secondary center, and then this keeps on growing till the, teenage is approached, okay. Now, as I must have said you in the last video, that this fibula is an exception to the law of ossification. That here, what was the law of ossification? The secondary center after birth, which appear first, is to unite last, okay, and that end is called as the growing end. So here, which was the first secondary center to appear, was for the lower end, okay. Lower end secondary center was to appear was on the first year. But then exception is that this secondary center which has appeared first, okay, will unite with the diaphysis. That means epiphysis and diaphyseal union will take place at the age of 15 to 16 years. 15 to 16 years. And for the upper end, which has appeared for 3rd to 4th year, will unite with the diaphysis at the age of 17 to 18 years. 17. So this is an exception. That means secondary center which appeared first was first to unite. Otherwise it should have been to the last to unite. So this is the only bone, long bone in the body which is an exception for the law of growing end, law of growing. And what is the growing end? Okay, which grows for longer time because it appears first and then it fuses with the diaphysis, okay, later, okay, after the fusion of the other end, okay, which appear later. But here the foramina, the nutrient foramina is directed downward, that means towards the lower end. So which should be the growing end? Though it is the not following this, but it's still the growing end is the lower end. Okay, I will show you the foramina here. Can you see this foramina? See this foramina. See this? This is the nutrient foramina, and it is directed downwards towards the lateral malleolus or the lower end. So this is directed. So the growing end is the lower end, though it is not following the law of ossification. I hope that this completes the fibula, and the next video will be on the articulated foot, and then the 2 or 3 video I can take on to the tarsal bones, okay, tarsal and metatarsal bone. Thank you very much for watching this video.